Okay, so we have restarted the recording, and the session today, of course, is going to cover the new corporate presentation that has just been released with the launch of the new marketing website as well. You can notice the fresh new branding on the PowerPoint screen. For those of you that are on, if you can keep yourself on mute during the presentation as much as possible, we will have some opportunities to take some questions at various points during the presentation flow. So if you are able to alt tab whatever off and off mute, on and off mute during the presentation, that'll be fine. And we're going to start off. Greg, do you want to go to the agenda slide just quickly? Thank you, sir. So on the session today, we're going to start off with a little bit of introduction around the kind of training roadmap. So we do have a plan in regards to how we are rolling out the training associated with this. We're then, and Tammy's going to handle that, so I'll hand off to her in just a moment. Then we're going to cover the presentation itself. Greg Holt has done a sterling job to pull a lot of this together, and is going to take us through some of the kind of origins, you know, what's changing and why. And then we're going to focus on some key slides in here and talk more about you know, what the messaging is and how to use these slides. Of course, prior to this session just now, there was a recording of a presentation that Greg has put together, and that's available inside Jagger University. So if you have not watched that session already, please do so after this. And then we'll finish off with a call to action where I'll pass back to Tammy again just to cover some of those kind of follow-up points. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Tammy just to give you a little bit of an overview of the training roadmap, and then we'll move over into Greg to the main event for this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much, and welcome to this presentation, which is the second leg on our journey towards the messaging training roadmap. On the next slide, you will see that it's divided into 4 parts. In part 1, that is, you are here, right? So part 1 is you received the deck. You have watched or will be watching soon Greg's end-to-end video illustrating how to present it, and in today's session. So your attendance today will wrap up your completion of part 1. I will give you a little heads up. This is participating through Jagger University is a new experience for a lot of us, and I wanted to let you know that there is a connection between WebEx and Jagger University. However, it's not dynamic. So it will take 24 to 48 hours for the system to recognize that you have attended tonight and mark you complete. So give a little patience, and you'll see it in a day or two. Part 2 of the training will come next week, probably Thursday or Friday, and it is a quiz. And so you'll be able to show us that you've learned what our new message is and have a good understanding of what our leaders would like every Jagger prospect and customer to walk away knowing about Jagger after listening to you present it. So answer those questions carefully. Not only will your leader be able to log in and see your score, but we'll also be creating a report for our executive leaders. So do your best and make 100. I know you can do it. Part 3 will be a series of brief videos linked to each slide in this deck. Now, you have the talking points already, so you don't need those in a video, but what you might find yourself needing is sort of the intent behind the slide, or the origins of it, or the spirit of the slide, just to prepare yourself for questions that you might get, or exactly what you want to say, given the situation, or the customer, or the vertical. And so each one of those videos will be linked to a separate slide, to each slide, and you'll be able to access them individually. So you won't have to watch. If you need to watch slide 10, you don't have to watch 1 through 9. You can click right and get to slide 10. We think that'll be very helpful to you. And my favorite part will be part 4. In December, you'll receive a rubric, and then you'll be making a recording of yourself presenting the deck. However you choose to do that, you will be submitting a video recording of yourself presenting the deck to show your leader how well you perform against what you're learning today and over the next few weeks. And then not only will you get to show your leader how great you are, but you'll also get to show your colleagues how wonderful you are and that you are the best. After the leaders approve of your video, then they'll be submitting them to our senior executives who will be assessing them and deciding who is the cream of the crop, and they'll be announcing the winners at our annual sales kickoff meeting in January.
Okay, well, thanks, Tammy. It's my turn now. This is Greg Holt, everyone. So greetings from Pittsburgh. I'm going to spend the majority of the rest of the session talking through the slides, talking about how we got to where we are, what we're doing, and pointing out a couple of the key areas that we wanted to provide you with some guidance on the story behind and the message that we want the customer or the prospect to take away from some of these slides. I'm sure by now a number of you have watched the recording of me walking through the slide deck in its entirety. I imagine not everybody's done that yet, and it's meant to be an example. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how we got there and give you some tips on some of the key slides that we think that are different from what we've been presenting in the past. To start off, though, we want to talk about what's the origins of this presentation and why did we create this. So a couple of slides and just a little bit of context to set the stage. So why did we change? Well, number one, there's a whole new set of branding coming out. Today we launched our new website. I think it looks fantastic. I may be biased. I hope everyone else who's had a chance to look at it so far feels the same, that it's definitely an improvement over where we were before. In addition to that, we have a significantly strong vision and innovation roadmap that has been created by various people across the executive team, the product management organization, and others that, you know, it's been a lot of work. I think there's an excellent story there, and it's a story we want to be able to tell. In addition to that, there's other stories that we want to tell. If we think about the existing kind of corporate introduction level 1 presentation, that was introduced sometime in Q1 of 2019. The situation, the circumstances of the company, the circumstances that our customers are facing are very different today than they were at that time, and so our story needs to evolve, and so that's part of what we're doing today. So back to kind of where we were and what we have been using. You know, our 2019 story was really a reactionary story around a lot of the market perceptions, particularly created by our competitors, who are spreading a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about Jagger, particularly around our growth via acquisition, and that our solutions were really a loose patchwork of acquired assets. You know, and that was a big struggle for us. And you know, there was a lot of work that's gone into the Jagger One platform strategy, the development we've been doing to tie the solutions together to create a common look and feel and a common experience for our customers, and getting interoperability amongst those solutions. We also needed to kind of really start to reinforce the idea of a single corporate entity of Jagger that was an amalgamation of the various acquired organizations. So even if we look at Jagger, Bravo, and Tool for Tool, but there were others historically as well. We're not abandoning that. Instead, we're expanding upon that in 2020 and beyond. So what you'll see a little bit here is a little bit more focus on the customer. We're going to spend less time talking about Jagger product functionality and really what are the needs of the customer and where they're going. As I mentioned before, we also want to share that vision and innovation story that we've developed. So you're going to see more value talking about, more discussion and talking about the customer value from a broad and deep portfolio on JaggerOne. We want to talk about confidence. I think that's something that a lot of organizations are lacking right now, just with the risky environments, the downturn, the pandemic. There's a lot of need for confidence today. And we want to present that strong outlook that Jagger has for future innovation and where we're taking procurement technology. So how did we get here? Well, it was kind of a long process, but I think it was well grounded in terms of the different areas where we focused on gathering information to come up with a plan. So we spent a lot of time interviewing various sales leaders across North America, across Europe, to get their input on what are their teams using today? What out of the existing corporate deck are they using? What other stories are they pulling in on their own? What are some of the key stories they want to leave with prospects? How can we better differentiate ourselves? And what are, if we had 3 to 5 key takeaways or challenges in the customer's mind that we need to overcome, what were they? We also spent a lot of time thinking about how do we focus on the audience. We have a very varied audience that we work with across all of the industries, all of the geographic regions, and all the solutions that we have. So how do we create a story that we can expand across or alter and tailor to those different audience members? We also got some input from external experts. So we've spent a lot of time in the marketing organization, the product management organization, and even the executive team talking with, for example, the analysts from Gartner. And they're not just analysts on business strategies or procurement and sourcing software, but they also have a number of experts in marketing roles who have been helping us kind of refine some of our messaging, the direction we're taking with our messaging, and how we should be approaching things like the website and like our corporate presentations. And then, of course, a lot of outlines, drafts, refinements, and more drafts, and dry runs, and more drafts. And a big thank you to Gary and to Mike and to Tammy for helping us through this process and bringing additional input and feedback as we've gone through it. So there were a couple of really big, or kind of key themes that started to come out of the discussions we were having, particularly internal discussions with the sales leaders. And what we heard as recurring themes is that, number one, we need to really start to focus talking more about business drivers and customer value and not product features. Secondly was that, in general, in our market, the solutions are very similar. In some cases, you can argue they're very commoditized. So how do we differentiate? Something that came out of that is what I like to call the art of the possible, which is how can we not just speak to what the customer is trying to solve, but how do we stand up as an expert in the field and have the confidence to be able to actually introduce or show the prospect where they should be going and what they should be aspiring to achieve as a procurement organization. Another key theme that came out was building confidence in Jagger, de-risking the decision. A lot of risk aversion right now, and so organizations really need to feel comfortable about who their partner is, and we need to be able to help them walk away from a conversation with Jagger with the confidence that we'll help them meet their goals. Another thing that came across quite often is that we need to speak more about our integration strength and our implementation flexibility. And then finally, there's a great story that we've been developing around where we're going as an organization, as a company, in terms of our vision for innovation. And we need to be able to create excitement within the prospect around what we're doing there. So let's talk about how that translates into the presentation and what's changing. from everything I just covered, there's three storylines that kind of emerged. One is around confidence, that Jagger is the right choice, that we have results that are real and they're pervasive across our customer base, and that they can have trust in our implementation and our integration methods so that they know they're not just making a decision on features and functionality, but that there'll be success at the end of the project. Secondly is around long-term value. So how do we support their needs both now and in the future? And can we look at business drivers and our capabilities and our customer results to back up that claim? And then last for that section is, can we show them the opportunity and what is the path to grow and expand with Jagger? And as I mentioned before, there's multiple elements of this innovation excitement around how we're on the leading edge, that we're driving towards what we're calling autonomous procurement, and that we have recent innovations that we can present as progress on that journey, and that we're really taking a strategic vision and not just feature roadmaps. So you'll see some recurring themes throughout the presentation where we talk about robust solutions to support business needs, flexibility in the way we configure, implement, and support their business, low-risk implementation and low-risk integration approaches, that the organization as Jagger has a commitment to our customers' success, that our mission, vision, and values extend across our business. It's not just something that we pay lip service to, but it's reflected in everything we do. And that we have the staff, the teams, and the partners we can bring to the table to help our customers be ready to execute on day one. I have a random slide, I'm sorry, that's in here that shouldn't be, so I'll skip it. There's a long-term value storyline, and I mentioned the art of the possible. So how can we define what best-in-class looks like? And the point there is to really help extend the conversation beyond what today's challenges are. So we may be in a sales cycle talking about sourcing or talking about e-procurement, but part of what we need to do is help extend that conversation and expand the pie, so to speak, as to what the customer should be looking for. We want to talk about how they can grow with us, how they can start with those immediate needs, but where we can take them into the future, where we can take them into new areas to support their business by plug and play, kind of bringing in a modular type solution where they can plug and play new capabilities and even bring in partner solutions. And this may be something around their own organization maturing around what processes, what strategies, or what categories they're going after. And the innovation excitement, right? And so this is something that we really started to gel with. I think if anybody was attending or watched the videos from the European Rug Conference, you saw a lot of really great content that's being created around the evolution of procurement and embedded intelligence and where we're going with autonomous procurement and how that's actually going to manifest within our customers' procurement teams in terms of what they're doing from their daily tasks and where the technology is supporting them. And then finally, customer stories and anecdotes. This is something I heard over and over again. It is absolutely a focus for us to continue to build out a broad library of customer stories. So there's a couple in the existing corporate deck today. We're working on a number of other ones from recent RUG conference sessions and things of that nature, but it's also going to be a very large focus area for marketing and product marketing the remainder of this year and going into 2021 to build more of these out so that you have a library in the deck where you can provide relevant examples and proof points of customer success based on different industries you may be selling into, the solutions that those customers are looking at, or the scenarios that are challenging their business today. So that is we have some, but there's more to come. And then just clarifying note before we get into some of the actual slides that we want to talk through today. And that is what this presentation is and what it isn't. And I think everybody already knows, right? It's next to impossible for us to create a global standard sales presentation that becomes the universal pitch deck for every sales rep in every geography across every industry. There's just no way we can cover every situation, every prospect challenge, every solution in a single presentation. But what we've tried to do is to give you a framework and a baseline around making the corporate introduction to Jagger. Here are the key messages we want to introduce: who Jagger is, what do we bring to the table, how do we move with our customers on the path to success, and where are we taking technology in the procurement market in the future. So with that said, I'm going to spend the rest of the time on some of the key net new slides and messages that you'll see. Now, this isn't a complete rework of our corporate message. It is an expansion and refinement. And so we're not going to cover every slide. You'll see there's the recording that I've done on an example of how I might present it to a specific fictional customer. And I expect everyone to be able to tailor and use what they need as they need it and as they see fit. But I do want to talk through some of the slides that are different, that have different visuals, that have a different base message around them than what you've seen in the past. Now, I actually ended up using a fictional company called Wayne Enterprises. I spoke about my work with Bruce. If anybody's put it together, yes, that's Batman, it's Bruce Wayne. But, and this is a gimme in my perspective, right? In terms of, this is a slide, right, that it is a placeholder. We all expect everyone to tailor the slide where we introduce kind of what we've already identified within that prospect, speaking to a couple of people as we introduce Jagger to the rest of the team, right? So it's kind of a gimme because we all know we need to do that. But I think one of the things I do want to point out is that I refer back to this multiple times in the recording of me walking through the presentation and in some of the slides as well. And again, I think that's also a gimme that you all know, right, to continue to make that connection, to continue to talk about the alignment that we have and that they have as an expectation about where we're driving the conversation and where we're driving the relationship. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that slide. This is the mission, vision, and values slide. And I know that you've all seen this. I know that you've seen it in different versions. This is the newest version with the new layout, the new branding and design work to it. And we all know how core this is in terms of our corporate culture and Jagger as an organization. Now, when we're presenting this, there's a lot of different angles you can take. You know, there may be opportunities within the prospect's organization where their mission, their vision, and their values actually align. And these are things you can find on their website, et cetera, et cetera. And that would be great to be able to tie that together if that's the case. But ultimately, what we really want to be able to do is focus and tell the story that our mission as an organization is our customer success. And a lot of companies say that, right? Everybody says that. Nobody says, I'm just going to sell you stuff, go cash the check and walk away and let you sink or swim, right? But what we want to talk about is our values and how they drive the behavior in all that we do. And that the customers should not only expect those measures or to see those values in action, but they should measure on us. That should be part of their KPI in their work with Jagger. Do they see passion from our people? Humility, empathy, accountability, and transparency. And it's really important from an organizational perspective that we talk through this because this ought to drive everything we're doing, whether it's part of the sales process, whether it's part of the implementation process, whether it's support calls or training sessions and things of that nature. This is how our customers should measure how we work with them. Now, you'll see here a completely new image. Now, There's some notes later in the presentation to make sure that you sign on to alerts so that you see new updates to this presentation. This is one that may change. We've put it together. There's probably still some tweaking that we need to do as we start to use it in the real world and get feedback on it. But this is our new, what we call a marketecture. Again, another area where we worked with the Gartner team to develop some better practices in the way that we're presenting information and messaging to customers. But the story really here is a little bit different in that we want to talk about the fact that we're looking at the strategic as well as the execution side of the organization, of the procurement process. So if we think about the planning and the strategy that goes into kind of the upstream side, the source to contract side, thinking of that as more of a strategic planning perspective, that helps us do a couple of things. One is it helps us talk a little bit more about things that we can differentiate on, like category management and supplier risk and performance management and development, where we have some competitive differentiators. We can talk more about some of the advanced sourcing capabilities that we can bring to the table. And when we talk about execution, it's really about managing that spend. So you've done the planning, you've gone through the process of contract negotiating and contracting with the suppliers that you want to be doing business with, and now you're executing on that. And where we can differentiate here is that we're not just executing on your standard, your common indirect goods and services, but we can help you execute and manage your spend on the direct side as well with our supply chain management solutions around supply chain collaboration and quality management. And it's all centered, or it's all wrapped around the user at the center, and the center being able to collaborate with those solutions, through those solutions with all of their suppliers over the supplier network, and that all of those interactions and all of that data that's happening, all of those interactions that's happening and all of that data that's collected is actually providing intelligence embedded throughout the process and usable in each of those capabilities. And it's all sitting on top of that Jagger One platform that provides the data management, all of the integrations, the additional third-party solutions we can bring to the table, the innovation that we're building really at a platform level, not at a solution level, as well as the Jagger University for training and support. So when we think about this in terms of some of the key takeaways, right, we're talking about the solution platform that they need to align procurement and supply chain with their business outcomes, from that strategic plan to the tactical execution, all in that seamless end-to-end process. Now, the results that matter slide is, again, it's a gimme, because what we want to do is kind of set up the story of what are some of the customer successes that we can talk about that are relevant to the current situation, whether it's that industry, whether it's the scenario or the challenges that that prospect are trying to solve or achieve, or it's the specific solutions. But by putting this slide in before we get to do that, it gives us a chance to pause, to engage and align with that prospect and those people in the room once again, and revisit that prospect's objectives, because we need to make sure that they're nodding their heads, saying, yep, these are the things that really matter to me, so that the customer stories and the way that you present those customer stories back to them keeps them nodding their heads, and that they know we're aligned on the objectives and that we're working together to solve their challenges. Now, this slide is not a lot of new information. It's very similar to slides you've seen in the past. It's redesigned, obviously, but we've had the slides that show our locations and the offices we have and the number of customers we have and things of this nature. There's a little difference in terms of what we're actually wanting to talk about, though, and this is conversations that we've had with the sales leaders around confidence, building confidence that we're large and we can scale to support their business, but that we're also small enough and localized in terms of being able to support them at every step. And that doesn't mean that we have all these regional sales offices, but these offices hold sales teams, they hold value engineering resources, they hold development, professional services, global customer care professionals. And so that we're not just a global company in terms of sales, regional sales offices, but we have teams embedded across the globe. So no matter where the customer is, what regions they're doing business, we'll be there to support them. And I think that's just a little bit of a shift in terms of the way we've presented that slide in the past. Now, this slide is completely new. It is a little bit more challenging, but this is something that we need to look at and tailor. Now, when I do this in the video example, I do spend a lot of time on this, but it's not necessary to do so. The key points here is we want to, again, this is one where we want to tailor the story to the prospect, but we want to expand or extend that conversation from the present challenge and look for those opportunities to differentiate. So we want to talk about the fact that change is a constant, right? That how is the customer, how is their focus going to change over the next 12 months from what they're doing today, the RFP that they're issuing that we're responding to? Quite frankly, we can look back and ask them, how did their focus change in the last 6 months or 7 months ago, 8 months ago, however long it's been, depending on where you are in the world, that this pandemic has had such a huge impact on their business. Change is constant, business needs are complex, and they are constantly changing. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about, they may be looking at something that's very simple, very low criticality of their business. They may just want to be looking at how do I get more guided buying to drive my buyers to the suppliers that I have the best pricing with. But I can start to talk about, that might be what you're looking at today, but what are you looking at 12 months from now? Do you have large-scale capital expense projects? Do you have building projects? Do you have large IT projects where you can start to look at more complex procurement scenarios where project-based procurement may come into play? Are you looking at something like maybe 12 months from today, you want to start to focus on invoice automation or different payment options, including supply chain finance, or using virtual cards where you get rebates and can actually drive some cash back into the business? If the customer is looking at a sourcing and supplier management solution, how do we start to change that story from just a tactical sourcing or even some strategic sourcing to actually looking at strategic category management? And how do you evaluate your suppliers and the value that they're bringing so that you can take a much more strategic approach to your sourcing and supplier management? Or how do you start to look at new categories of spend that are more critical to your business, that are more complex to source, where we can talk about sourcing optimization? And so these are some opportunities with this slide to think about what the customer is trying to achieve today and anticipate where can you take the story that says you're making a decision today, but you need to look at the long-term implications of that. Is the vendor you're choosing today for this scenario, for this solution, going to be able to support you as your business changes, as your organization matures, as you look at different categories of spend across your business, as you look at different strategic approaches to managing your business? I think this is an opportunity for us to start to pull away from some of those competitors, particularly when the solutions are very similar.
Hey, Greg. This is Gary speaking. Conscious you are about halfway through the number of slides you were looking to cover on today's call. Just taking a quick pause here with the audience on the phone to check to see if anybody has any questions. Greg's not going to cover all of the slides that are in the PowerPoint. We've kind of cherry-picked a kind of core 12 slides here. And yeah, just keen to kind of take a quick pause, see if there's anybody that has any questions about what Greg's covered so far. If not, we can carry on.
Oh, no, we're not taking questions, Gary.
that you get a chance to grab a drink of water. No questions from anybody? You're saving them all up. Okay. All right. Listen, we'll let Greg carry on with the other 6 slides. But yeah, please look if you have questions about clarification in the messaging or any kind of input, anything at all. Then please, do speak up. We'll take another slot after the next 6 slides or so. Then. Okay. All right, Greg. Listen, back to you. Cheers.
All right. Thanks, Gary. And thank you. I did need a little drink there. So, and this slide here is not a lot different than what we talked about before, but it's something that we want to be able to present to the customer in terms of being able to expand what they're doing at their own pace with Jagger. So, we've talked about Jagger One being a modular design with plug-and-play components, but there's also the ability, based on our growing partner network, to expand beyond just what we bring to the table and start to extend that to external systems. If you're paying attention to the number of partners that we're working with now, the number of partners that we're bringing in different areas. So we've often, we've always had, Adobe and DocuSign. We're building out more around supplier information and supplier risk. We're certainly building a lot more out on the invoicing and payment side. And so this is an area for us to really talk about how they can expand. They can start small, they can start simple, they can add more, and it's all part of the same system. So the integrations are already managed. They can plug and play. Their workflows are already there. Their data is already there. They just have that ability to go ahead and expand with Jagger One as they look for additional value or additional capabilities. The next slide is part of the section within the presentation that is actually titled Our Path to Success. And this really kind of kicks it off in terms of our commitment to you. And what we want to do here, I talked a lot at the beginning around the confidence and the Jagger partnership, building confidence with the customer, that we are really focused on their success and that we're making a commitment to them. And so the story that we want to talk about is that our focus on their story is a long-term journey, and it begins now, but it continues throughout the relationship with Jagger. And so there's a number of kind of key points behind here in terms of what we do throughout the process of the selling process, the implementation process, and post-go live. But we want to make sure that the customer's taking away, or the prospect is taking away, the confidence that we're focused on that long-term value, that we're focused on joint success, and that value is going to happen. There are going to be points of value throughout the process of working with us. So whether that's in the beginning of the sales cycle of really understanding what their short-term and long-term goals are, or whether we're bringing in a value assessment where we make recommendations, we're bringing best practices to the table, we're helping them build the business case, through the configuration, the rollout, the partners that we can bring to the table from an implementation perspective, a consulting perspective, and the ongoing relationship with Jagger through whether it's account management, client success partners, the global customer care team, to help them continuously monitor their progress towards their end goals, measure it, and refine and improve what they're doing with Jagger. Now, the next one, I don't know that it's necessarily a lot of new material here, but it is something that we heard more and more, we are hearing more and more, and certainly the sales leaders that we spoke to felt that it was important to talk more about our integration strengths. And it's something that we can speak to anecdotally, right, that the customers that we do work with feel that our integration strength is unparalleled, that it gives us the opportunity to build confidence or de-risk the integration challenge. And often what happens is integration becomes a risk that isn't necessarily understood until it happens, until the risk shows itself. And this is an area for us to actually start to spread a little bit of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt around our own competitors as we talk about our robust integration frameworks. And this is something that we will be focusing on to build out some of these stories around where we hear that we actually integrate better with SAP than Ariba does, or that other competitors of ours, when they do updates and when they do enhancements and product releases, those integrations sometimes actually break. When they change configurations, their integrations actually break. And so this is an area where we can make some differentiation, and particularly looking at our integration as a service as an IT-free solution where we manage the integrations for the customer. So there's more story in the notes and in the example that I recorded, but I did want to bring this up as it's not necessarily something we haven't been talking about, but I think it's something that we can spend more time on or make sure that we're talking about more consistently. Now the next slide is where we're starting to get into that last section, which is the journey to autonomous procurement. And when we think about the base of this, or kind of the foundation of this is what we've been talking about around embedded intelligence. And it's really one of the primary benefits of the Jagger One platform underlying our solutions. And if you think about from the perspective of the piecemeal approach to working with this vendor for these solutions and that vendor for those solutions, and having to either not be able to pull all of that information, all of that data and your workflows together, or the massive amount of internal work that a customer has to do to build their own data lakes and build their own BI and reporting and analytics tools. Being able to have all of that in Jagger One to provide that digital transformation in the intelligence in our platform. Being able to integrate not just internal data and processes and supplier transactions and things of that nature, but the external data from our partners, from their customers' ERP systems, et cetera, to provide the data insights and the transparency. And this allows us to build at the platform level the augmented analytics, the other innovations that we're bringing to the table for better data-driven decisions. So if we think about this is the basis from which we can start to open a lot of doors towards more intelligence, more insights, and better decision-making in the future, which takes us to the journey to autonomous procurement slide. And this, I think if you did watch the videos from the European rug, Aman and Thomas, I think in separate sessions, both did a great job of starting to really lay out how this journey is really taking us, it's in an evolutionary pattern from software tools to becoming part of a procurement strategy engine within our customers. And this is important for us to talk about how we're leading the charge towards procurement of tomorrow. We talk about the short term, the immediate needs, but the long-term strategy and how we can support our customers well into the future. And this is where we need to provide that confidence and the level of excitement around where we're going and telling stories around the potential capabilities that we will be able to put in the Jagger One platform based on the embedded intelligence and the innovations we're doing. If you saw, and I can't recall if it was Aman or if it was Thomas's session around autonomous procurement, I think it was Aman's. They used a really neat analogy around maps and GPS systems. Really, when we think about automated procurement, augmented procurement, intelligent, and the journey to autonomous procurement, tying it back to something that allows the customer to really understand the differences between automating to delivering cognitive intelligence to delivering autonomous procurement. They use the story of using paper maps to look up where you are and how you had to get there and finding your own route, to the early GPS systems where they told you where you were, and at least gave you a bearing or a heading on which direction you're going to get back to where you came from, to modern navigation systems that could look and find the best route, the most efficient route, the least amount of traffic, construction zones, and even find a restaurant along the way because you said you were hungry and wanted to find something quick before you got to your destination. So the point now we're looking at the future of self-driving cars and how our journey is following a very similar path where we're automating, we're adding intelligence, we're creating recommendations and starting to take on some of the tasks for you to the point where eventually our customers will be able to hand off a lot of the mundane, repetitive tasks and focus on strategic work. And this last slide are some examples. And I think this is important to be able to tailor these examples to the situation you're in. So there's some examples here for sourcing, contracts, procurement, etc. But I think the story is, if we're all, the story is, or the question to ask the prospect is, if we're all being asked to do more, how are you going to get there? And focusing on the time savings of autonomizing that mundane work. So there's some examples here around if you're talking to a procurement, a customer who's looking for e-procurement tool, imagining that procurement solution that suggests new items. These items might not even be in your catalogs, but it knows that our other customers are buying these items. They have better performance or better TCO. It can help you perhaps even get reviews around those items. It can even start looking at the sourcing process to negotiate that with those suppliers to bring them into your catalog. So there's stories here that we can start to lay out. There's some examples in the recording to actually get them to recognize, the actual impact of this kind of technology and how it's going to manifest itself to completely change what they're focusing on and allowing them to be more strategic. So that is actually the list of the kind of key net new slides that we had, some messaging that we wanted to talk through, some tips, some ideas. We can open up again for questions now. Nobody wanted to ask any before, but we have lots of time, and then we'll go back to, I don't know if it's Tammy or Gary, for some additional calls to action.
Greg, yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Greg, absolutely appreciative of the group effort here to advance it to this stage. I know it's been a huge team effort, and kudos for the state of the current materials. You alluded to, I don't recall if it was in the prereq video or during this call or both, but there's a subset of case studies. Is that list of case studies that are available in the new branding readily available for reps to look at and, represented by vertical? It wasn't clear to me, for example, like in the pseudo Wayne Industries, what vertical they were in, but, if I'm, say, in manufacturing, is there a list somewhere of these 10 converted case studies and they're validated as referenceable, or we'll go through a process with AHA to validate the referenceability and things like that? Like, can you speak to where that is and how, if I'm a rep, I have access to the 10 to 15 stories that likely I can draw correlations to my prospect?
Yeah, I can give you a very short answer and then a medium-term answer. So the short answer is there's not a lot built. We've been focused on getting this core foundation done. We will be, so there's a couple that are in the pre-recorded version. There's a couple that I have in play or in progress right now. My suggestion is, and I would love this to be a sharing exercise, that if there are ones that people are using today, they should continue to use them, format them into the new slide deck, but share them with me so that we can go back and revisit them. So one of the things that we're going to be doing from a product marketing perspective is revisiting all of the case studies we have there's a lot that we have that are super old, so I'm getting into the midterm. We have a lot that are super old. We need to go back to some of those customers, find out what else they've been doing. A lot of those customers have expanded with new solutions. We can build those out. There is, I don't want to call it an end goal, but a goal is to build out that library. I don't have kind of a listing yet of what that library is going to look like. We're just starting that process. But it is our goal to be able to build that out, whether it's revisions or refinements or rebrandings of existing, to finding gaps where we don't have any and we need to create net new.
Thank you.
Understood. Any questions from anybody else out there?
Yeah, I guess maybe it's the same question, not just on case studies, but you had some of the value metrics in there, and it sounds like people are responsible to kind of lift and shift, maybe to fill in the bullets, but is there a notion that we'll get a library of those, kind of maybe from case studies down to industries, down to value metrics, so when we're assembling these slides case by case by case, you actually have a library to dip into and pull from?
I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to.
I think you had a slide, I don't know, slide 12, you said 12% cost savings, or you had kind of some of the values that we deliver with.
No, that was actually so that was sorry, it's taking longer than I expected.
They even look good going back.
This year, so this was actually the objectives or the goals that the prospect has. So this was a realignment to what were they trying to accomplish. And so the point here, right, was not so much to say, hey, we can do these things, but let's make sure that we're, again, on the same page before I come back to customer stories that I can tie, the relevance back to what you're looking for, right? So again, it's the preamble before the 3 case studies I may want to present that speak directly to those kinds of results that this prospect is looking to achieve.
Okay. I'll still hold that. It would be nice to have a library of actual issues, maybe from the case studies, that we can then plug in to validate some of these, where we reduce costs by a certain amount, and kind of some of the other, I think this is where we struggle a little bit, or some of those end quantifiable stories. So it's tied to Christian's, I guess, question, maybe at a more detailed level.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that,
Greg.
Yeah, and then
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing then also, and I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of good, I think I know the answers, people need to pick and choose, but is there like an executive version of this presentation? Like a 5-minute to 15, it's probably ultimately up to the salesperson to choose that, but I don't know if there's a recommended, like these are the traditional condensed versions, the full versions, depending on how much time you have to go through it.
No, there's not an official. Again, I mean, this is meant to be the library, so to speak, of here are the content pieces that tell the Jagger corporate story. There may, clearly there's not going to be a need for all of this in every meeting, but we wanted to be able to present, here's how you can tell this story. Here are some slides to support it. You can clearly, as necessary, the situation you're walking into, pare it down, take the things that you think are most important to that prospect, tailor the solution, tailor the message yourself.
Hey, Greg, again, in the same vein, have we worked with our professional services team and implementation team around, use cases, case studies, things that they've come across? I know we come to sales and we talk, with our contacts, but, it's an avenue that I've been trying to tap into and utilize that. I don't know if in your team, if you guys have thought of that or done that.
We've thought of it. We have not pursued it to any great degree at this point.
Hey, Gary, I'm just going to come back to Greg's point there about some of the ROI pieces and stats from the case studies. We do have, of course, hard and soft savings that have been available in some standard corporate slides. just a first point on that, Greg, I actually can't remember. Are those slides rebranded and pulled across into the deck? We touched them through the evolution, but now let me call if there was an exact replication of those ROI slides in the deck.
They are not yet, no. So the process of kind of converting everything over, I think honestly, most of what we have converted over to new branding was in support of the new website. Mm-hmm. Clearly, dozens, if not hundreds, of pieces of content have been worked on, but there's still probably as many that still need to be converted still.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll pick up on that one with you, Greg, and also on Greg Galkel's point there. There are a summary of all of the metrics extracted from our case studies of value that's been gained, and we don't have coverage across every vertical, but we do have it listed against which ones we do. So I will make a point of calling that out through the AE homepage, and I'll send some communications out on the chatter around that. Are there any other questions? Just while you're maybe thinking of something else to ask Greg, the slides that he's presented here just now, there are in the notes section the kind of talk track, as well as these call-out points. So Greg ran through this presentation deck today, not in a way that we would deliver it to a customer per se, but each of those gold boxes that appeared with the A, B, and C, like we see in front of us just now, they were taken from the notes where there are key points. So we recognize that, we don't expect anybody to deliver a like-for-like talk track to somebody else, but there is a talk track there that Greg's done the recording. It's in the notes as well for each slide. But most importantly, for each of these slides, there are 2 or 3 points as to why this slide exists, what messages we're expecting to get across. That's the important piece. So in this case here, tailor examples, and the other 2 points here, this is what we are looking and expecting you to try and articulate in your own words, okay? Make it feel natural to the audience. So do pay attention to the notes for those call-outs, those key points. And then above and beyond all of this, it was a really nice opening there from Greg talking a little bit about the context. And that just wasn't for, your information. The context that he provided there, those themes that we were referring to, those are the, overarching message and feeling and themes that we want to leave the audience with. We spoke about confidence, spoke about long-term value, and the excitement around innovation. It's important that you make that clear as you can on those points when we're delivering this to our prospects and customers. These are the themes that our various SMEs and executive sponsors have input into, and we want to see that we're doing as good a job as we can to try and push these things forward. So really important kind of opening context to these slides, and to further back up that and make it simple for yourself. As I say again, each of those slides has those key points highlighted in the notes. One last shout out for any other questions before we move on to start to wrapping up. Okay, listen, Greg, do you mind just going on to the next call to action? And Tammy, if you're still on the phone, I'll hand back to yourself just to give a wrap up for the team here in terms of next steps, and we'll conclude this session.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gary, and Greg. Thank you. It's been a marathon And, you know, what an exciting day to be a Jagger, you guys. It's the 25th anniversary, a beautiful new website and new messaging foundation that has the potential to really set us apart. It's a really good day, and I hope you leave this meeting feeling the same way. We do have a couple of call to actions for you, the first one being pretty important. As you heard Greg talk about the different ways that the actual PowerPoint deck is going to be updated. So make sure that in SharePoint you flag the PowerPoint deck, not just to follow it, because that's what I thought all you had to do, but no, so you follow it and you set it to alert you when changes are made to it. And that way, you know always, you know, at what point you need to go out and get the new deck. So when you go out the next time, there might be more case studies in there. The next time you go out, maybe the architecture graphic has changed. So just set it to alert you, and you can see in these screenshots, you right-click, or you click a little three dots, and then this is where I go to copy a link most of the time, but if you go down that list, there's an alert me. Make sure you set that up to send you notifications immediately when it's been changed. And then a few things on the next slide just to kind of wrap up for the day. Complete part one. If you haven't watched Greg's end-to-end video yet, that's all you have left to do to get complete on part one of this training. Carefully answer the quiz questions in part two when you receive that quiz. Access and use the resources that have been provided to you, and then start tailoring your presentations with your prospects in mind. So that's when, you know, when you actually start doing, that's when your questions come up, and we're all here to help you. Greg, Gary, my team, you know, all of us are, and Greg's team, we're all here to help you do this and do it well. So with that, Gary?
Thank you, Tammy. All right, well, listen, it is an exciting milestone to push this out to the team. It's been a lot of hard work gone into making this where it is just now. I'm sure it will continue to evolve. I'm sure you'll also agree that, you know, the new look and feel that's been applied to the PowerPoint is really nice and refreshing. So a huge thanks to Canal, not Canal, sorry, Silic, for pulling that together. I will make a shout out to Canal for helping with some of the orchestration behind this session today. And Greg, listen, thank you very much for delivering this. On that note, I wish everybody a good afternoon, a good evening, wherever you are. And if you have follow-up questions or notes, please don't hesitate to reach out to Greg and myself. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.